We have with us a very delightful lady today, Dr. Erin Fluegge Woolf, who is a professor up at Southeast Missouri State University in the Management Department. But today she's better known as Mrs. Missouri, and she's going to come up here and tell us all about it. Welcome, Erin.
Okay, first things first, can you all hear me? Is it okay if I don't use the microphone?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, a little bit about me. Thank you for having me here today. I do want to tell you that this morning when I was kind of reviewing some notes and making some preparations, I looked on your website, the Cape West Rotary website. Looks beautiful, by the way. And I noticed that it said that something that all 1.2 million Rotarians have in common. Do you know what it is? We take action. That made me excited. So as I was preparing for today, I thought about it. I was like, gosh, you all take action. I can tell you've already done all kinds of stuff today that I'm hearing about. It's wonderful. And those are the kind of people that I like to be around too, people who take action. So what I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about my pageant experience, because most people look at this and they're like, what is this? It's Mr. It's what? Mrs. I'm going to tell you all about how it happened, how it works with what I'm doing, and a little bit about my passions and my platforms too. And you're going to learn a fun fact about me, because I consider myself part of the we in the We Take Action as a Rotarian. So that's for you, Terry, if you're listening, for you. So, what should I start with? Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I am born and raised in Jackson, Missouri. I see a lot of Jackson alums here and women. I got to chat a little bit about it. Went to St. Paul for grade school and everything, and then went to Jackson High School. And in Jackson High School, I was thinking Rotary this morning. I'm like, I know more about this than I think. What do I know about Rotary? And I pulled out my old yearbook. I was going to bring it, but I don't look like this in it, so I didn't. And I looked. I was a junior Rotarian in high school. So that meant in Jackson, I got to help with Pancake Day and Bean Day and all this kind of stuff. And so it was exciting to me to kind of come back and say, if you would have told me in 1996 or 1997 I would be doing this here, I'd be like, absolutely not. No way. Not at all. Not a chance. I wasn't a pageant girl. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, too. So I went all through Jackson, and like the night before I graduated high school, I decided I was going to go to Southeast. Just couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be in service. I didn't know. I think I was a t-shirt away from signing up for, I think, the Air Force. And for some reason, I decided to stay here. The military's always been near and dear to my heart, so I decided to stay here. I went to Southeast, so I'm an alum of Southeast too, which makes a very unique connection with my students. And so I took 5 years to do my undergrad. And yes, we call it a power lap or maybe a super senior, I don't know what all you call it. But it makes it easier for when my students come and talk to me now of, I don't know what to do, what should my major be, can you help me? Yeah, because I declared mine 11 times on paper. Asked my dad. They were like, what is it today, Erin? It was political science. I think that's how we met, right? I was a political science major for a while. We went to So somewhere along the lines of just doing all this kind of stuff, fun stuff in college, I took a marketing class. And I loved it. I fell in absolute love with it. And I found that business was the way to go for me. And so I talked to my advisor, and she's wonderful, Carol Heisler. She's still an advisor at the university, amazing, amazing woman. And she talked to me, and she said, now, Erin, if you do the prereqs for your MBA program, you could have 2 degrees in the time that you would have 1 degree if you went back into business. Ever the negotiator, I was like, that sounds good. That'll kind of make up for me taking so long getting through school. So all of a sudden, here I am, a couple years later, I have my MBA, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, I absolutely love this. I'm teaching. I had a graduate assistantship while I was at Southeast, and guess what I got to do? I got to teach. I got to teach algebra at 8 o'clock in the morning to freshmen and seniors who had put it off forever. And something that they all had in common was that they hated it and they weren't good at it. And I was only about maybe 2 years older than anybody else in the classroom, with the exception of the occasional non-traditional student. So I loved it. I absolutely loved teaching. It was fantastic. And if I love teaching algebra to these people who hate it, think how fun it would be to teach business classes. So all of a sudden, my husband, which I'll talk to you about him in a minute, Mr. Missouri, he was my boyfriend at the time, and we said, hey, let's get married. Let's move to Florida. Let's find a business school that has palm trees out in front of the business school, and because that's how you should make a decision on grad school. Let's do this. So we did all of that in 2004, and I go to the University of Florida. Go Gators! This is Mizzou country, right? It's complicated. All of my friendships since I've moved back to Missouri. But as Mrs. Missouri, I can relate to it. So we're down there, we're having the time of our life. They're winning national championships, doing all this kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, we see an ad for a job announcement at the University at Southeast Missouri State. And I love Missouri. I do. We thought about it, we talked with people about it, we researched it, we prayed about it, we did everything we possibly could. I came and interviewed for the job, and here I was, got the job back in Missouri. So that leads you, that's my history. And the fun thing is about it for me is coming back to Missouri, I'm seeing people, okay, the people I sat with were kind of, Jerry and I are sort of related because his son is married to a Fluegge. Linda remembers me from St. Paul. Like this is why we moved back to Southeast Missouri. It's awesome. As Mrs. Missouri, one of the things that I tell people, they're like, what makes Missouri so special? Why should we visit you and not just fly over? You know, we're known as a flyover state, right? Like the people were awesome. So, fast forward a couple of years, I'm teaching the leadership courses, things like that at the university, and something that I've always told my students to do is to push themselves outside their comfort zone. Now, that can be lots of different things. In my leadership classes, it's making a leadership development plan. In my creativity classes, it might be conquering a fear. I had a guy who, he just wanted to learn how to conquer his fear of heights. So he went big. He went skydiving. I was like, okay, got it, check, not scared anymore. But for me, I'm always looking for a challenge, always looking for a new opportunity. So my husband, he's used to this. He's like, no, what are you doing today? What is this? I'm always doing different things. So I've been Googling stuff. What are leadership programs in Missouri? Did Leadership Cape, loved it, still involved with it. Did the WashU Women's Leadership Forum in St. Louis, loved it, awesome. Did Leadership Missouri, would recommend it to anybody if you're interested. Loved it, was awesome. I'm president of my class, awesome. So I'm Googling one day. I'm like, what are women's leadership programs in Missouri? Mrs. Missouri pops up. I go home, and I tell my husband, and he's like, what? What are you doing now? Of course, you know, no, in my memory, he was like, oh, that's so awesome. What is it? Tell me all about it. But it might have been something like, how much does it cost and when is it? But he knows I love to shop, and I'm a value shopper, so it's great. If you met him, you'd understand. So I decided to do this. Now, you don't just go and be Mrs. Missouri, you have to compete for it, right? So this is what I was going to tell you about. And kudos to the person who manages your Facebook page, by the way. I loved your little shout out of like how she manages her journey to Mrs. Missouri. I loved it. I saw it this morning. So, for those of you who were curious about, well, wait, did I miss the Mrs. Cape Girardeau party? Or the pageant? Because I was Mrs. Cape Girardeau first before I became Mrs. Missouri. No, you didn't miss it. It's different. At the Mrs. level, we do things differently. You apply for a title. Yes, sometimes the comments in the Southeast Missouri get nasty about how all of that works, but I tuned that out and got excited about it. And really what happens is, it's an application process. So the women's pageant, it's different. You apply for a title, you have to come up with a platform, which I'm going to tell you about here in a second, and then you're awarded your title. And you can do whatever you want to with it, but you're basically promoting awareness about your platform as you get to the state level. So about September, I was crowned Mrs. Cape Girardeau. I did lots of different things. What else did I do? I went to visit St. Paul. I attended several chamber events. Had a Mrs. Cape Girardeau welcome party at the library in downtown Cape. She's one of my sponsors. And it was just fun for me to meet all kinds of people and tell them about my platform, which I'll get to here in a minute. So along the way, I'm still like, never been a pageant girl, never understood that that would be exciting and fun, but I'm getting to that here in a minute. We go to Kansas City. March 1st was the competition for Mrs. Missouri, and there's people from all over the state who are competing. And what really got me excited was how the women treated each other. You would think, for a pageant, women might not be nice to each other, right? People told me, lock up your jewelry. Lock up your jewelry because people will try to sabotage you. Not one bit. These women were amazing. The women in my classroom, this is how I want them to act too, that they help each other out, they empower each other. It was fantastic. At the pageant, to let you know a little bit about how it works, there's 3 components that you're judged on. There's an interview competition, at which I won, which was exciting because I speak for a living and I was hoping I would really do well in that. And then there's a swimsuit competition and also an evening gown competition. I've never done anything like this before in my life, right? So pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, I'm researching, I'm asking my students who are lots of pageant girls, and they had lots of helpful tips of doing crazy stuff that if you're really interested to know, I'll tell you. And so we get to the pageant, wonderful. I fill my husband's Toyota Tundra full of stuff for 3 days, completely full, driving to Kansas City. And Friday night, we have our interviews, and how that works is that you're with 6 judges, and you go round robin around the room, and they're gonna ask you anything. This girl reads CNN every day. I watch KFVS, I read the Missourian, I do all of that, I pay attention to everything. I like knowing current events. I was up on my game. I was ready for anything in that interview. So about an hour before, they say, okay, they're not gonna ask you anything serious. They're just gonna ask you about being married. They were lying. They were lying. So we get into the interview, and it was really exciting because they asked me everything from, what is your definition of integrity? It's like, well, I teach leadership. Do we have like a semester to talk about this, or how much time do I get? 5 minutes. So we go around the room, and they ask me everything from, what is the color of success? I had an orange dress on, orange, to who is better trained, Rob or Zoe? Zoe's my 5-year-old boxer puppy. And I was like, that's a trick question because Rob trained Zoe. So anyway, asked me all kinds of questions, asked me how I felt about Benghazi, asked me all kinds of things, and it wasn't just about marriage. So that was really actually quite exciting. That was Friday night, interviews are over. Saturday morning, we prepare a little bit for the pageant, and then we're just basically prepping all day long. That night, we get on stage. There's the other 2 parts are a swimsuit competition and an interview, or an evening gown competition. Ladies in the room, how do you shop for a swimsuit?
God.
Yeah, everybody kind of makes that face. It takes a while, right? Guys, you know how your ladies shop for a swimsuit? It takes a while. For the pageant, they mail you one based on your measurements. So that was quite exciting. We were just excited to know that they picked a good color for us, and all of us had long torsos, so if we kind of did that, we were all the same. Anyway, it's just funny. It's funny, right? You're all in it together. We're all moms. It's one piece. I'm dog mom. So we do the swimsuit competition. We do all of this. They ask you your final question on stage, which I was really excited about. Because I do have to give a shout out to one of our businesses in Cape. The Andrew Jackson, the Prom Superstore downtown. I found my dress there. My husband and I like to take drives on Sunday mornings. We're walking around and walking downtown, and I say, that's my dress. It was in the window, and I found it, and it was the one that I wore that night for the interview and final competition. And here I am. They asked me my last question. I mean, I had practiced this. I went with Joyce Hunter. How many of you know that career linkages, career services are open to all university alums, even if you're not still a student there? Yeah, it's awesome. They do great work there. So I prepped with her, and they asked me my final question of what would you do if you met with Mrs. Missouri? Nailed it. And then they start, I mean, it's kind of a blur a little bit that night. They call us back up on stage, and they've got the top 5 out here, and they start narrowing it down and narrow it down. And then here I am, standing next to Mrs. St. Charles, and we're holding hands, just like we had practiced, right? Because they rehearse everything. And I remembered, I said, okay, they're going to say one of our names first, and one of our names second. I don't remember what order they do it. They say mine first. They say her name first. I don't remember. And so I hear them say both of our names, and mine was last, and she looked sad. And I was like, oh, I guess that means I won. And so it's wonderful. I mean, that's just how it happened. I gotta tell the truth. And so I walk, make my victory lamp and everything, and it was really a neat experience. Now here's the thing. we had a charter bus all picked out, ready to go for whoever in Cape wanted to join the party bus and join us in Kansas City. For whatever reason, it fell through, and I'm kind of thankful because it snowed. It was crazy. March 1st in Kansas City, there was a huge snowstorm that kept us there for 2 extra days, which was nice because then I finally got to relax and like kind of see Kansas City in the snow. So that trip home was exciting for me because it was basically following up with all the people who had called me, congratulated me, and started booking appearances with me. So finally, I get back home, I'm Mrs. Missouri, and here's where I'm at. What does it involve? What do you get to do, Erin? Well, my favorite thing is that we have to pick a platform, right? Something that we're very passionate about, just how you all have service above self. And I know that you have polio, you have a golf tournament, you have all of these fabulous things, that you're doing good things for good people. And I needed to pick something that was near and dear to me that I wanted to raise awareness for. And so I selected the Vintage Now fashion show as a fundraiser for the Safe House for Women. That's my platform. And I want to share that with you all today because the Vintage Now fashion show, it's organized by Deb Mavers, who also owns Pastimes Antiques downtown. And ever since it started in 2010, they've raised over $100,000 to give straight to the Safe House for Women. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Safe House, it is a community where women can live free from domestic abuse and violence, but it's not just a shelter. I had the honor of visiting with the employees of the Safe House, and it was fabulous, the things that I learned. If you've ever thought you had a bad day, I don't think it compares to what they do. Like the work that these people there are doing is just absolutely amazing. I learned everything from, they're not just proactive, or they're not just reactive in treating domestic abuse and violence, but it's also proactive too, that they have community educators who go out in different schools. And if you want them to come to your kids' schools or whatever to do a safe dates program, they have everything that you can possibly imagine. And it was exciting to me to learn all of these things, but then there's scary stuff too. Like 1 in 4 to 5 people, there's domestic abuse or violence in their home. That's 1 in 4 or 5 people. If you look in the room and do the math, I'm still a math nerd, remember I taught algebra and loved it. I've already kind of done a head count in here. But if you think about how scary those numbers are, we're really trying to help people with the fashion show. And the cool thing is, if you think about, well, what does $100,000 do? Well, it costs $38 a day per person to stay at the Safe House. They're getting ready to do something and make their Safe House more ADA compliant, so there's going to be a massive fundraising opportunity that you're going to be hearing about in the community that I'm going to be active in as well. So it's just exciting for me to be a part of that and really just, I don't know, okay, so yes, it's a fundraiser, yes, it's sad to talk about domestic abuse and violence, but it's everywhere. So we do it in a fun way. What is the Vintage Now fashion show? How many of you have been? Yay, gold star to you. Well, that's the teacher. I would invite all of you, and it's not just for women either, guys. My husband goes. He brings his buddy, and there's a bar there. That's how I had to get in there. They do a good job. And what we do is we take vintage clothing and pair it up with modern fashions and show you how to do that. It's a lovely night out, and it raises all kinds of money for things that goes to help the Safe House for Women. So how did I get involved with that? In about 2011, Kylie, which I went all through St. Paul with, Deb's daughter, Deb Mavers, owner of Pastimes, she approached me and she said, "Now, Erin, would you want to try out to be a model in our fashion show?" No, really? Sure, okay. So it went from all of those different emotions to I'm going to try out for it. So I have been a model in the show. The last, this will be my 4th year, so Vintage Now 5 is this fall, and we actually are excited because it's moving to a Friday. It's going to be on a Friday night, October 17th, in the Osage Center, so we're moving to a new location. Very, very excited about it. And we hope to raise all kinds of extra money. Now, I do have to tell you this. Everybody knows that my favorite thing about me is that I'm a professor. That's what I'll tell you first and foremost. That's my favorite thing. I love my students. But they know on the day after the fashion show, they're like, she's just going to talk about how she's going to quit her job or or whatever. So the nice thing is, I do tell them, I'm like, I love you guys, but I would give it up in a heartbeat to walk a fashion show for a good cause any day. But That doesn't pay the bills. So I do get sort of that crazy edge with this kind of stuff of, that nervous energy that you get when you're on stage or up in front of a group of people. So that allows me to share my story. Now I do say this, the things that I'm active with right now are Leadership Missouri, Leadership Cape, WashU Women's Leadership Forum, the Power of Women Luncheon, all of this kind of stuff. And I want to say, because you see lots of men in the crowd, that it's not just about women's empowerment. We're not just going to go and make strong women. We also need strong men in our classrooms to do this too. That for every, I probably make, women in general make anywhere from 83 to 87 cents on the dollar that men make, and that should bother our students in our classrooms. And I just raise it to them of, what are you going to do about it? So that's just an interesting conversation that I get to have with my students as leaders, and just to make them aware of different facts and to know that there's all kinds of different ways to empower people. Now I know a lot of people look at this and they're like, what are you doing, Erin? What is that? And I do get sometimes, oh, you're Miss Missouri. They say that until they see my giant husband, who's 6'5", and then he's like, oh, it's Mrs. Missouri. He doesn't know that. So I always like to close on a note with Mr. Missouri, and where I wouldn't be anywhere without him. He is, for those of you who don't know, it's Rob Woolf is my husband, and he works at Erin, and he is an energy consultant, so he designs electrical engineering jobs. I say he's a magician, so I might get business, but not that. And he has been a wonderful supporter to me throughout this whole journey. And the cool thing is, he got to meet all the other Mr. Missouris at the pageant, and they were like, dude, bro, come here. So they all get in this corner over here, and they're like, just be a good purse holder, learn how to work her iPhone, do all this, and you'll be fine. It was so nice for me to have like, oh, it's a man empowering other men. But it was just a great day, a wonderful supporter, and he does do all those things. He's glad it's summer because coat season's over and he doesn't have to carry my coats anymore. But he's wonderful, and I couldn't do all of this without him. So with all of that, I do say I've had an amazing journey as Mrs. Missouri. So what happens next? I get to go to Tucson in August and compete for Mrs. America. So in case you're wondering, how does that work? There's a Mrs. USA pageant system, there's an America system, just like there is with any other pageant that you might know a teenager or somebody who's competing. There's also another Mrs. Missouri, she's Mrs. Missouri United States, I'm Mrs. Missouri America. And I will be competing, so I gotta figure out, like, how am I gonna get all my stuff? If I filled up a Toyota Tundra for 3 days to go to Kansas City, I'm thinking I might need an RV to get to Tucson for 10 days. But basically what you're gonna be seeing me do is making lots of appearances. I will be doing fundraising. I just want to get my word out there and share my story and hear from the people of Missouri. I told everyone I'm sort of a servant for the state. So what I would be asking from you all is if there's anything from me that you would need. Is it somebody that you want to come volunteer? I love to talk. I've been emceeing things. I've been volunteering at lots of different events. So if there's anything that you would have me come talk to, I'd be happy to do that. Anything, visiting schools, stuff like that, I'm happy to spread the word about that. But that's basically what my road to Mrs. America has been. So next March or April, I would love to crown, well, I get to crown the next Mrs. Missouri, but I want her to be somebody I know. So if there's anybody who's remotely interested in this, or you're like, no, I know somebody, have them come talk to me. I would absolutely love to do it. And so with that, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about how I've taken action with Mrs. Missouri and managed that process too, and I welcome any questions that you all might have. Thank you. You guys have questions or anything? Yeah.
Do you do any, of course, you mentioned some of the things you're doing here in Cape Girardeau, but since this is Missouri, do you travel outside this area and where have you gone?
Absolutely. I get to travel quite a bit in the summer. I'm teaching summer classes right now and they end June 26th. So I get to travel pretty extensively outside the area. I've gone to Jeff City. I've gone to, and what I did there was some stuff with Leadership Missouri when they were visiting the Capitol. I also emceed a fashion show in St. Charles, and that was, their benefactor was Connections for Success, a female-owned business that benefits low-income people for business clothing, things like that. I'm also slated to go to Branson later this summer. In all honesty, I keep a separate calendar with all of my appearances because I'm really going all over. I know that I have some speaking engagements in St. Louis. So yeah, if you know something that's outside of the area, I'm happy to do that. Get to go to Springfield, I think, too, here in a couple of weeks. So this girl's gonna be traveling quite a bit this summer.
Is that on your own dime, or do you have a budget or something? They give you money, is all on you?
A lot of it's on my own dime, but a lot of times people will sponsor a hotel room or something if they ask me, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's expensive. That's one thing that I've really learned about this is like, yeah, it's everything's kind of expensive, whether it's clothing, jewelry, anything like that. A lot of it just because I don't like to wear the same stuff twice, right? That kind of thing. But the nice thing, if you shop vintage, which I would all advise you to do, you can get some pretty good deals. So, yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. Questions? Yeah, what you got?
Can't you tell us just one cat fighting story? Has to be at least one.
Talk to the tomcat over here.
I could, but it would have to be about me and my sisters. I've stabbed my sister with a candy cane pen before as a kid. So when I say all of this stuff, I'm glad you brought this up. Because yes, we're all in the fitting rooms together. We're trying to get everything. We're trying to figure everything out. And I want to do all of this women's empowerment, but it's not all rainbows and sunshines and unicorns and trumpets blowing and things like that. I have 3 sisters. I know how to compete for resources. I teach a negotiation class. This isn't like, I'm not going to just make friends. Yeah, we're all friends on Facebook, but I want to win. When I went to this was cool. When I went to a chamber event, it was a business after hours in Cape, and I met with, the guy from Bug Zero, Erin. Erin, yes, thanks. We were talking about stuff, and he was like, you keep saying if you win, Mrs. Missouri. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be cocky about it. And he's like, why don't you just say when you win? I'm like, well, I don't want to be cocky about it. And once I changed, it changed everything for me. So for me, that's been what I'm saying, like when I am Mrs. America, I'll come back and talk to you again. Now I will say this, at the Missouri level, I think people were just nicer, they're just good old Missourians. They're all like, that's kind of why we want to move back here, right? They're just good people. People have told me that at the national level, lock up your jewelry. And so I'll come back, and if I do have a cat fight story, I will, and it won't just be about my sisters. And you got that on tape that I stabbed my sister with a candy cane. Yeah. Great. Mrs. America, right? Good question. Other questions?